Today we're going to be talking about the game Autobahn, a strategy game about building the German freeways. Now, in this review, I'm going to break it into 5 sections. Theme, where I'll talk about what the game is about and how well that theme is implemented. Mechanics, where I'll give a brief overview of how the game is played and rate it based on how engaging, intuitive, and innovative its mechanics are. Then the game's components, the level of strategy that's involved, and the game's complexity. So first let's talk about theme. In Autobahn, the objective of the game is to build the German Autobahn, and players are competing for victory points by being the most efficient to do so. Now, the thing that's very interesting about this game is, whereas in other games, building on a network or extending a route, the action itself will give you victory points, in Autobahn you don't get any victory points just by building a road. Rather, building a road lets you put an employee in the construction office, and during the course of the game, these employees can be promoted if you accomplish other tasks that make you more and more efficient. So, as these employees get promoted and they become higher ups in your company, the employees will earn you victory points at the end of the game. So building roads is how you accomplish getting employees into the offices, but promoting them is all about being very efficient and clever with your turns. I'm going to talk about mechanics next, but for now, I'm just going to say that the theme is well done, and I would give it an 8 out of 10. So let's talk about mechanics next. How do you play Autobahn? So first, let's take a look at what you have when you set up the game. First, you have a map of Germany, and there are several routes with different colors. These routes extend to the borders of Germany, going into other countries where there are different icons indicating what kinds of goods can be exported there. Now, the routes are all different colors, and those colors correspond to cards that players have, which we'll look at in just a second. Along the center Autobahn, you'll see several depots where you can load trucks, and that's going to be a really big part of the game later on. Then, over on the side, you have offices. Down below, you have the construction offices with the colors of the desks corresponding to the colors of the Autobahn. And then you have the administrative offices up above, which is where employees are going to go once they get promoted. Now, there are 4 different promotion tracks, and we're going to see how these correspond to the player board, which we'll look at next. So, on the player board, we have several spaces above the top of the board, and in these spaces, you're going to be able to play actions. And in fact, these actions can be upgraded during the course of the game so that you can play them more frequently. And then you have a few technology tracks, and these technology tracks correspond to the spaces in the administrative offices that you saw earlier. In fact, the only way to be promoted in the administrative offices is to have the corresponding area in your technology track unlocked. Those technology tracks are unlocked by keys on the side of your player board. And then along the bottom, you have a few additional resources that you use during the game. You have these stations, which will be placed on the board, and you have some trucks, which you'll be able to load up and deliver to other sections of the board. And then finally, back over here in the offices, there is the development track where players are going to be advancing and collecting bonuses as they move along that track. And then lastly, over everything, there are just tons and tons of symbols. Now, I like to talk about symbology in a game when I get to the components, but suffice it to say that all of these symbols just correspond to different kinds of bonuses that you receive when you get there. So, bonuses when you make deliveries into cities, bonuses when you place or build roads on these sections of the Autobahn, bonuses when you accomplish different levels of technologies, bonuses when you move on the development track. There's certainly a lot of bonuses everywhere. And then finally, every player starts with just a few cards. Now, despite the artwork and the icons at the top here, the only thing that really matters about this card is its color. In fact, the icon in the top right corner just means that this belongs to the player of that color, and the icons in the top left just correspond to resources that are on the board for the track that corresponds to this card's color. So there's no real information on here except color. We'll talk about that in just a second. And in addition to your hand of cards, at the beginning of the game, every player is going to draft a route card, which I'll talk about a little later. All right, so those are very brief overview of the components of the game. So let's talk about what you're actually doing. The game is played in turns, and turns are interrupted by administrative phases that will happen 3 times during the course of the game. Aside from those 3 breaks for administrative phases, it's just players going around taking one turn in clockwise order. On a player's turn, a player is going to delegate a task to one of their locations of operation. So, if I wanted to perform any task on the green Autobahn, I would play my green card on the associated task. So let's do an example. One of the most important things you can do on your turn is add a segment to the Autobahn. So if I wanted to do that, I would put my green card on the Build Autobahn section, and then I would pay the costs, which in this case is 8 Deutschmarks, to place one segment on the green Autobahn. Now, immediately after doing this, I'm going to be able to take an employee and put it in the green construction office. And then that would be my turn. Now, if you could just do that every single round, then you would probably win the game, because the whole point of the game is to build the Autobahn. You could play another card on the build on your next turn, and then you could pay the cost and build another Autobahn and put another employee in the office. But of course, you can't just keep doing that for a few reasons. One, there is a limit to the number of actions that I can play on this board before I have to, must pick up my cards. So at the beginning of the game, I can only put 3 cards in this column, and then I can either put a card in a different column or I have to pick up all my cards. If I pick up all my cards, that would be my entire turn, and my only benefit for doing that would be to get 1 Deutschmark per card. Now, the other reason why you might not be able to do that is because you would just run out of money. So we have a few other things that we can do in order to get money. Not only that, but these other tasks will add 2 more phases to a player's turn that I haven't mentioned yet. So aside from playing a card and doing an action, there are 2 other things. They're all related to trucks. So let's talk about trucks. On your turn, another thing you can do is you can play a colored card into the Load Trucks action. When you do this, you get to place your truck on the depot from a city of the matching color and load it with the good that is produced there. So that can be appliances or chemicals, what have you. You put it down, and then that would be your action. However, there is another phase. After every turn, whether you've built a road or you've loaded a truck, there is a phase where you can move trucks. And you can always do this for free at the end of your turn, as long as the truck that you move is on a city matching the color of the card that you played. So if I had just loaded this truck on an orange city, now it's the end of my turn because I played an orange card and my truck is on an orange city, I would be able to move my truck twice. And the number of moves I get is based on the round number. So 2 moves in the first round, 3 and 3 more in the second and third rounds. If at the end of my turn I have moved my truck beyond the end of the Autobahn, so outside of Germany and into a bordering country, then I can take a delivery token and place it on that country. Now, every player has a board that shows them what the preferred goods are in every single country. So if my truck was able to deliver a preferred good, I would put my token here. If I was able to deliver any other good, I could put my token here and I would just take the coins, which is worth much less than the benefit. So generally I want to deliver preferred goods. The last thing I can do though is if there are any bonus actions that are available in the place where I've made a delivery, I can take that bonus action and place it in front of me. And then that would be the end of my turn. That being said, there is one more phase of a player's turn, and it is always the first thing a player can do. At the beginning of a player's turn, if they have a delivery token from a delivery that they made earlier in a previous round, they can take 1 truck bonus or 1 delivery bonus. So this happens every round. So if I go back to the example I made earlier, where I was building the road on the green Autobahn, before that even started, if I had a delivery bonus, I could take that delivery bonus, and then I could build my road, and then because I played a green card, I could check to see if I had any trucks on a green city, and I could move them the number of moves for that round. That being said, that's only 2 actions, building roads and building trucks. There are still 3 more actions, but they're much simpler now that we understand those 2. So another action you can do is upgrade a road. When you upgrade a road, you have to upgrade the entire segment, whether that's 1 section in length or 2, and you have to pay the cost for each section that you upgrade. Doing this allows you to also put your employee in an office. Upgrading a section of the Autobahn has a few different effects. One effect we'll talk about later when we talk about the administration phase, but the other effect is that when you move a truck, if a truck starts on an upgraded section of the Autobahn, then the truck gets 1 extra movement. So it's a great aid for trucks. Then another action is taking one of your stations and placing it on an Autobahn. The restrictions here is that where you place it has to match the color of the card that you played, and it has to be a station that has been reached by a section of the Autobahn. When you place a station, it also has a few effects. One effect is that whenever your own truck passes your own station, you can pick any of the bonuses at the bottom of your player board to receive immediately. Or when another player uses their truck and passes your station, you will receive from the bank the smaller of the rightmost exposed coin. So in this case, you would receive 3 coins whenever anybody passes your station. And then finally, the last action you can perform is to unlock a technology. So to do this, you place a colored card in this column, you take the key matching the color of the card that you just placed, and you can pick any space going from the bottom to the top to unlock. Now, all of these unlocks will give you more abilities, more bonuses later in the game. Most significantly, these unlocks enable you to be promoted in the administrative office, and being promoted is how you get the victory points. Aside from playing a card from your hand, there are 2 other things you can do. One I already mentioned, which is the ability to pick up your cards and to get Deutschmarks for every card picked up. If you're able to play your entire hand, you don't have to do this. Whenever your hand is empty, you can just pick up your cards, but then you don't get the Deutschmarks. Or lastly, you can take a government grant. So you can place one of your employees once per round and take the value that's associated with that round. That's just a great way to get money if you're really running low. It doesn't cost you anything except a turn that you have to give to only taking money. So clearly there are some other things going on in the game that I haven't talked about. There's this development track, which players are going to advance on, and then there's promoting itself. All of those things are handled during in-game effects. So moving up on the development track is a bonus action. Getting promoted is one of the results of a development track and some of the results associated with your technologies. You just do these things as you encounter them during the game. They are not actions specifically devoted to being promoted or moving up on the track. So players are doing this in turn order for the duration of the game, except for 3 administration phases. We'll talk about those now. The administration phases happen at the end of 3 ages. The first age ends after 10 sections have been built, the second age after 12 sections, and the third age after 14 sections of road. The third age is also called the reunification age because that is the time corresponding to the timeline of the game's theme where the Berlin Wall is taken down. And as a result, Eastern Germany opens up and players are able to build roads extending along the Gold Autobahn and into East Germany. They're also able to transport pharmaceuticals, which gives an extra bonus to players who can accomplish that. And the third age releases advanced player cards, which can be picked up during the course of the game as a bonus. When these ages come to an end, the administration phase happens. I'm going to describe this very briefly. Basically what's going to happen is players are all going to collect income based on how much they've contributed to the Autobahns. So you're going to be able to calculate a value for each Autobahn and distribute coins to each player based on how many seats they have in the construction office. Then the next thing that's going to happen is every player is going to evaluate their route card. And to evaluate a route card, what you're looking for is whether or not two cities on the route card are connected and whether or not the sections of road connecting them have been upgraded and if they have service stations. The more upgraded freeways and more service stations, the better the status of the route and the more benefits a player can earn, including being able to promote their own employees. And then the person who ended the round gets a little bonus, a little incentive for doing that. They get to promote one employee and the next age begins. Now, the administration phase is done at the end of every age, even at the end of the game. In fact, especially at the end of the game, because that's where all of those promotions and all that money really matter. What you're going to do is you're going to look at how high up your employees have been promoted, and then they are going to earn as many points corresponding to what they've accomplished. So think back to what I told you earlier. In this game, you don't get victory points by placing the roads, but by being efficient in doing so. So in this column, you're going to be getting victory points for every employee in construction offices. In this column, you're going to be getting points for every delivery to a different country. And in this column, you're going to be getting victory points for every station that you've built during the game. And then finally, the last column, which doesn't require technology to advance through, gives you victory points for sets of 20 coins. If you have any employees that were put into the lobby but have not been promoted, they're worth 2 victory points each, and that is the entire score. There are no other points for goods or anything on your player board, so it's very easy to calculate at the end of the game. I really love these mechanics both because of what they do to support the theme and because of the innovation that's being done in this type of gameplay. So to talk about how it supports the theme, I want to compare to worker placement games because I love worker placement games. One of the strengths in that mechanic is that it's so clearly analogous to something we do in real life. Like, you're placing a worker to pick up wheat or to place a worker to cut wood, and that makes sense in a real life analogy. Now, I see that so often and I like it, but I very rarely do I see something with a totally different mechanic that absolutely supports what the game is about. I see this as you are a company that has teams set up on all of the different Autobahns, and during the current time period, you can only set each team to one task. And it makes sense to me that while these teams are all working, you can't give them a second task unless you draft another team by, adding a card to your hand, or you pick up all of your cards, and picking up all your cards would signify that the time period is over and now everyone's ready for their next task. So I think that's really well done because it's something that you can absolutely plan for. You know what your hand of cards are, you can see kind of like where your teams are going, you can plan in the future where your teams are going to be and where you want who doing what, and the idea that the color of the card that you play has an impact on how you transport the trucks means you really have to plan strategically. So for example, you can be in a situation where you want to play a green action, but you don't have a truck in a green city. But if you play a red card first, you can move a truck to a green city, and then on your next turn you can play a green card and move the truck again. Like, this sequence of planning in order to be efficient is really well done, and you have to pay attention to what other people are doing in this game. You cannot just focus on your own thing because of the transportation routes that are being built. I mean, you know that everybody has route cards, and you're paying attention to their routes because if you can kind of piggyback on their efforts to build the national freeway, then maybe you don't have to build your entire route by yourself. You can work with what they're doing over there. Or if you see them building a route and it extends into an area where you can put a station, you might not do what you were planning just so you can capitalize on that opportunity to build the station when the opportunity arises. Or, somebody extends a freeway into an area that enables a new bonus. If you extend it there further, you get a bonus, or you can move a truck over there. Like the route planning, the interaction with other people as they're building their routes. There's so much going on, and it all just it really creates an environment where you are very much working together to build the network for the entire country, and you're working competitively to make enough money so that you can be the leader. My only hesitation about the game is that the bonuses add a little too much. It's not more flavor, it's just more thinkiness. And it can be a little overwhelming. Now, the game is still new to me and I haven't played it that many times. I have a feeling that the more I play the game, the more accustomed I'll get to the bonuses. And maybe the bonuses are really there to just keep the game interesting once I have mastered it. I'm definitely still wanting to explore this game and play it more and learn some more strategies and stuff. So the bonuses seem a little too overwhelming. A lot of symbols, a lot of things to take into consideration, but it's not a it's certainly not a deterrent for me. I am definitely looking forward to playing this game again. I just think mechanically it detracts from the intuitiveness of the game and the full enjoyability. Like there is a little bit of like, oh, you got to keep looking at the rule book. Oh, what's that one mean again? What's that one mean? And it makes it a little bit of a cliff to learn the first couple of times you play. So for mechanics, I give it an 8. Concerning the game's components, the first thing I'd like to take a look at is the game's symbology. There are a lot of symbols here. There are technologies, station bonuses, delivery bonuses, and development bonuses, all of which are represented by symbols. So naturally, you'd want to ask, what does the player aid look like? And the answer is, there is no player aid. Instead, there's just a page on the back of the rulebook, and this section isn't even all-inclusive, as the technologies are only listed in a different section. I'm not saying the symbols are bad. They're actually well designed to deliver meaning, but this means players who are learning the game will be constantly passing the rulebook around. Personally, I produced photocopies of the relevant pages, and that worked well, but nevertheless it is a demerit for the game. Aside from the symbols, everything else is no better than average, and at times less than average. I do like the wooden pieces, the trucks, and the stations, but if you look at the keys and the delivery tokens, these are cardboard and very small, which makes them a pain to deal with. But the greatest offense is that the player boards are not double layered with an inset to prevent the pieces from sliding around. For instance, the position of the delivery markers is absolutely critical to gameplay, and tiny pieces sliding around on a small delivery bonuses board is a very ineffective way of handling that. I also found that it was difficult to handle the cards that are supposed to slide under your player board. They're thin, stick to the table, and with time they will wear down from fingernails scratching at the edges to pick them back up. All said, for components, I have to give the game a 3. Now for the strategy score, I think this game is immensely strategic, and the way I base that decision is based on the levels of depth of strategic thinking. So, for example, in this game, you're not just thinking about what you want to do, but also what your opponents want to do. And you're not just thinking about this turn and the next turn, but also maybe the next 2 or 3 turns, and mostly because you're planning on how to move your truck. And you're thinking about bonuses, and you have to try to find a turn that optimally utilizes your bonuses and timing. So there is so much going on and so many levels to think about. So I would give this game a 10 for strategy. Now when I say a 10, that means that this is one of the most thinkiest games and one of the most engaging games to think about that I own. That doesn't necessarily mean that I think it's the perfect strategy, because there are definitely evenings where I want something that's a little less meatier, and that may be you too. 10 is a very high score for strategy. I think that from time to time, playing something that's this juicy is really fun for me. And then for complexity, I guess what I really like about this game is that while it is so strategic, it isn't too complex. There are definitely games that have larger rule sets that take longer to explain. I explained this game in like half an hour when I was teaching it to my friends, so I would give it probably a 7 for complexity. So those are my ratings for Autobahn. If you are into this, you should check out theperfectboardgame.com, because there every game is rated by this 5 attribute system, and you can actually contribute to the ratings yourself. You can search them, you can adjust the formula and find matches using that database, and you can even get notifications when games go on sale. So you can check that out at theperfectboardgame.com, and that is my web app. Thank you very much for watching. If you are interested in the design shirt that I have made, I will also put a link for that in the description. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.